I'm here with Matt for another episode of Cold Email Breakdown. And in this series, I speak with salespeople and entrepreneurs about how they can build a relevant lead list for their cold email campaign. And then after that, we attempt to write a great cold email that's centered around their lead list. Matt, if you don't mind just giving us a brief introduction about yourself, maybe explain to us who you are, where you're based, and what your business is, and then what you're trying to sell, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, my name's Matt. I'm from up here in Canada. I run a business that removes negative Google reviews and negative content online for financial advisors. I started off doing SEO, like your classic affiliate site type thing, and then just stumbled into this. Actually, I had a friend who was a financial advisor that had some materials online that were detrimental to our business, and I didn't even know this was an industry. I was like, oh, I could just, take care of that for you if you want. And then just kind of all went from there.
All right. Well, I think your particular business has a lot of potential for, I think your particular business has a lot of potential from a creativity perspective, because what you shared with me via email was quite interesting in terms of the ability to scrape real reviews from different Google Map listings and then incorporate that information into your campaign, into the copy. So I think there's potential here to have quite a high response rate if we do it right. Is there a particular type of business that you want to focus on in this video? I know there's probably different types of industries you can go after, but just to make it simple, what kind of business should we target for this particular video?
So within the US and Canada,
Okay.
And like mom and pop financial planning or wealth management firms,
Sure.
The big ones kind of have their own, internal stuff. So just looking at that small mom and pop stuff, even like a one person, wealth management firm,
Sure.
up to like 10 employees kind of thing. So typically around there is what I've been doing so far.
Sure. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to present my screen. If we go to Google and let's say we type in something like wealth management firms, New York. I'm just curious to see what we see in the Google Map results. If there's sort of 3 businesses, then that might be difficult to build a solid lead list. But if there are dozens and dozens or maybe hundreds of businesses, then that there might be some interesting opportunities there. So I can already see that some of these businesses have some negative reviews or relatively poor average review scores. So like, for example, this one down here only has 3.3. So if I click that, and what I'm showing here is pretty obvious. I think this is not exactly groundbreaking stuff, but I think what might work well in terms of building a lead list is making a list of businesses from Google Maps which have a certain score in their reviews, and then from there using some kind of custom scraper to scrape that data so that we can put that into a CSV file or Google spreadsheet, and then we can even put the specific negative reviews for each business into that CSV file and include some of that information into the cold email potentially. So we'll see how this goes, but that might be a good way to move forwards here. So for example, this business, they have a few 1-star reviews. So just filter this.
Yeah, exactly. Reviews like those.
Yeah. I don't know if you're able to share this, but if a company like this responds to your cold email and they want to work with you, how would you remove the reviews, or what's the process that you use?
Yeah, so the first thing right now that I do, but it's just mostly because it's been over referral, is I do like a 30-minute consultation and just give pretty honest feedback on how realistic it is, or kind of what the odds are. Anything that I do get removed is just because of a Google policy. So it's not like we're going in and hacking anything, right? It's Google willingly agreeing to take down the review. So we build a case, try and find those violations, and ultimately get it to someone at Google, because when you click the report review button, honestly, it's kind of like the door close button on an elevator at this point. Like, it just, nothing happens. And same with the appeal. So it's really hard to get it past Google's AI systems to actually get it to that specific team that can actually like have a human being review it. And then they'll have to see, no, yeah, this violates our policies, or no, it doesn't.
Okay. And is the reason why you're targeting wealth management companies due to the fact that they're just good customers, they have a lot of money, or could you do this with other industries as well?
Yeah, you could do it with other industries. There's a couple reasons I do it with this one. Obviously, when it comes to money, people get very emotional, and so it just so happens that they're more likely to leave very derogatory reviews. And the more emotional their response is, the more likely it is that it'll violate one of Google's policies. And I also just happen to have a bit of a background in this industry as well, so I'm just able to communicate with my target customer a lot easier, and know their lingo and language and that kind of thing.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, so I think, it's I'm pretty it's definitely possible to build some kind of scraper to get all this information, all this data that we want. So unless you have a better idea or a different variation of this idea that you want to share, I think from a lead list perspective, I would basically, if I was in your position, I would make a list of the top 50 cities in the US. And for each city, I would get this scraper to scrape the Google Map reviews for the main keyword topics like wealth management firms for that city. And then it would automatically put every single company that has a certain number of negative reviews into that Google spreadsheet. And then from there, with also other data. So for example, for each company, it might take a specific, maybe it'll take the name of the people who gave the review, or maybe it'll take what the review was about, and then you could use, for example, OpenAI, GPT-4o, for example, to, maybe using Clay, you could create a little summary of what each negative review was about, so that in the PS line of your email, you might say something like, PS, I saw the review from this person about this thing, so wanted to reach out. I think that would be a really cool use of AI. I'm not the biggest fan of AI in most situations, but I think there's certain things that if you put the effort in, you do it right, and you have really good execution, it could actually result in a really high response rate. So anyways, I don't want to talk all day about this, because I think it's more interesting to actually start writing the email. But do you have any questions about how you would create that lead list?
No, that's genius. I didn't think to actually include like any type of the language from the review. So that's super interesting. I'm looking forward to doing this.
Yeah. So I have this Google Doc, which I'm going to share with you, by the way, when we're done with this call, which you can then, of course, edit. But this Google Doc has a framework that I like to use when I'm writing my cold emails. And we're going to soon work together to try to write a first version of this cold email. And so for example, what I just mentioned with the PS line, we'll add that in here as we go along. But before we get into that, I just want to quickly mention, when it comes to building the scraper to get all that data, there might already be tools online. So if you just Google something like Google Maps scraper, there might be tools that you can pay a small fee to, which can do this for you already. But if you don't find anything that really works for you in the way that we want to do it, then the best way is probably to go onto a site like Fiverr or maybe Upwork and hire a low-cost developer from somewhere where it's not too expensive. And you just ask that person in a very specific way to build the scraper to get the exact information that you need for your cold email campaign, and to automatically insert that data into a Google spreadsheet so that you can then upload that into your campaign. I think that's what you should do, in my opinion, if there's no existing tools that can do this for you. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And also, you might already be aware of this, but for anyone who's watching this who isn't aware, when I talk about building a custom scraper, sometimes that might seem like it's going to be expensive, but often you can find people on Fiverr for a really low amount of money to build something relatively simple So it doesn't need to be some crazy expensive software. It can be something that's relatively simple and fast, and it can be really effective. Because the alternative is just exporting a bunch of random leads from Apollo or whatever, and then getting a super low response rate because you're just targeting generic businesses, and it's just really not, it's not really ideal. Because if you have a low response rate, you can blacklist your email accounts, because that's how Gmail and Outlook, one of the primary things they're looking at now is just your overall positive response rate. And if you're emailing 1,000 people and you're getting just one response or two responses, they're going to blacklist your account. So contacting generic lists of businesses is really not a good idea from a deliverability perspective either. That's why I keep talking about the lead list, because it directly impacts your deliverability. So, and by the way, feel free to stop me here, interject if you have anything to mention. But if it's okay with you, I'm just going to start going to this email. So usually when I write a cold email, I start with the subject line and also the PS line first, because they usually tie together. So let me just put this here. So what I usually like to do, again, it depends on the situation, but I usually like to tie the subject line to the PS line. So for example, in your campaign, I might say something like, I might mention the name of the person who gave you the negative review. So I might say, I might put a custom variable that says something like, I don't know, review name. I'm just making this up. But yeah, something like the subject line, I might just say something like, I mean, we go back to this Google map, for example, and we see that this company has a few bad reviews. This is not a very good example. I'll go back to the previous one, which had more reviews to work with. So let's go. Let's just do this one, for example. Go back to reviews. We go back to the lowest rating, and we could do, something like, we take the name of the person who gave the review, for example, and maybe that name of that person would be the custom variable here. Sorry, the custom variable here in the subject line, and then the person's like Mary Dillon's review on Google. This is probably not even like, this subject line kind of sucks. Like this is like the kind of thing you probably want to refine after this call, but just giving you the general idea. And then the PS line, I would say something like, I saw the negative review that gave
Ooh, that's good. I like that.
Company name on Google, so wanted to reach out. So like, you can see how we're tying the subject line to the PS line, and
right.
And a lot of people, they look at that and they think, well, that's not, what's the big deal here? Like, why does that even matter? It's because if you send cold emails to people and they don't believe that your email was written specifically for them, they're not going to respond to you. If they think that you sent the same email to 1,000 companies, the chance of them responding to you is basically zero. So doing what we're doing here with tying the subject line to the PS line and making them about something very specific, it just dramatically increases the chance of them responding to you, because they're going to think, okay, this is so specific. What's the likelihood that this is not a real person? It's pretty low, so let me at least respond. So that's the reason we're doing it. So that's where I usually start with the email. Do you have any opinions on that, or any ideas of how we could potentially improve that?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I didn't even think to do that. And honestly, like, just because of the industry itself, like, one negative review is just very, depending what it says, right? If it's just like the receptionist was rude, it's not, gonna be the end of that business. But if it's something like, we lost half our money or something, that's significant. Yeah. So yeah, I think they're definitely gonna know the name of the person who left that review on Google for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's another way it kind of catches their eye.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is that it's also verifiable information. So you're mentioning something that they can easily just look. They can just go to their Google page and they can just clearly see, okay, like, yeah, the review's right there. It's not like you're not making something up. It's right there. So it's definitely something worth for the, it's gonna call their attention. Okay, so we've done the first part of this email, and down here is the framework that I usually use. And in case anyone who's watching this video is interested, this framework, which I'm working with, I have an article on Email Chaser's blog, which if you go to our blog and you click this where it says how to write a cold email, in this article, you'll see if you scroll down, the same framework that I'm about to show you in the Google document is mentioned. So this is the same framework which I have in the Google Doc right here. Now, usually, a lot of people in the cold email industry right now are talking about personalized first lines and starting your cold email with some BS, sort of BS AI generated stuff, which isn't really related to anything. Like they'll say something like, "Hey, I was on your website and I noticed this article about something. It was a really good read." That just makes your email sound like every other sales email. Is not going to increase the response rate. So what I like to do when I write my emails is I start by saying exactly what you do and why it's 10 times better than whatever they're currently doing. So that's not always applicable to every single situation, but in your email, I think potentially what we could start the email with is just saying very clearly, very simply, what you do and why it's awesome. So if you could summarize maybe in one sentence, I don't know if that's possible, but if you summarize in one sentence what you do and why it's just awesome, I think that would be a good way to start the email.
Yeah, I guess it depends how specific we want to make it. Like, obviously we removed a negative Google review, but like what we really do is build their case, file the appeal, get it to a human at Google for them to see. So I'm not sure how I would word that in this email because it's kind of a behind the scenes thing. But
I think what you mentioned there about getting it in front of a human at Google is actually quite important, because if you just say something like, "We get rid of your negative reviews," they might not believe you because, okay, right. Well, how? It's like, prove it. But if you say, we help wealth management companies remove, I help wealth management companies remove negative Google reviews by getting their appeal requests in front of someone at Google. Like, I think there's some, it's a little bit more believable because you're kind of providing some kind of explanation on how it's actually going to work. So again, I'm going to write some stuff here, and after this call or later, you might want to edit it slightly because this is not going to necessarily be the perfect version. But I would say something like, I help management companies. And by the way, when you're creating cold email campaigns, this might sound obvious to a lot of people, but it's really important that you segment your lead list so that each lead list is a specific type of person or company. So in this particular campaign we're writing this email for, every single lead in your CSV file or Google spreadsheet is going to be a wealth management company. Like you don't usually want to have different industries and different things all mixed together, because then it makes it more difficult to write a targeted email. The more segmented, the better. So I help wealth management companies review negative remove negative Google reviews. Negative reviews from their Google listings by getting their appeals in front of a real person at Google. Another thing I just want to quickly mention is that you want to try to keep your email under 100 words, because if your email goes over 100 words, then your response rate is going to go down quite a bit, because most people don't have time to read a whole essay. So whatever we write here, if you spend an additional hour editing it, you could probably take out some things, or you could probably rewrite it slightly so it's a little bit more efficient and you're using less overall words. So the first line, you might say something like, I help wealth management companies remove negative reviews from their Google listings by getting their appeals or their appeal in front of a real person at Google, something like that. And then the next section of this framework is mention a case study or something impressive to build credibility. So for example, if I was writing an email for Email Chaser, I was doing a campaign to sell Email Chaser, I would say something like 2,000 plus companies already use Email Chaser. But in your situation, obviously your situation is different. So you might say something like, I've already helped these 2 companies remove whatever reviews. Do you have anything that you could potentially put here, which you think would be beneficial?
Yeah. I mean, I could either say the amount of firms I've worked with, or do you think it's better to go?
Can you mention the number of reviews you reviewed?
Actually.
Is it because unless you've worked with, I don't know, Goldman Sachs or something, which every single wealth management person is going to obviously know about. Yeah. Maybe you have. I don't actually know. Like, please tell me if you have. but if you only have clients which are like relatively local and they might not be household names potentially, it might be better just to say something like, I've already removed 837 negative reviews from my clients. Right. Okay. What do you think about that? What would you do?
Yeah, that makes sense. Either the amount of wealth management firms I've worked with, or the total amount of reviews. Yeah, either of those would make sense.
Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna make up a random number. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have.
In total, it's been about, I would say 50. It's probably, I use wealth management firm loosely because a lot of it is just individuals. Because Google allows you, if you're like an individual financial planner, as long as it's client facing, to create a Google business profile. So a lot of my previous clients have been that. But for the purpose of this campaign, it'll be wealth management firms.
You can say something. I've already removed 50 plus negative reviews for other wealth management firms. I think that's a decent line. And by the way, I don't always use this case study section. Sometimes I write cold emails. I don't even bother mentioning anything there, depending on how much space I have left to keep it under 100 words. But we'll just keep it there for now. And then when you're editing this later, you may or may not remove it, depending how you feel. And then the final part is the offer / call to action. And this is, in my opinion, the most important part. So this is the part of the email where we're going to make some kind of offer. We're going to make some kind of offer which hopefully is so good that they basically can't say no to it. And then we're going to write some kind of call to action, which is very clear, which the lead can respond to with either yes or no. Ideally, something that doesn't take up any of their time either, because most people don't want to get on some 30-minute phone call usually.
Right.
So, again, each industry is different, so I'm not saying this applies to every single business, but that's the general idea here. So maybe what we could write here is... Well, actually, I think it's better if you first tell me what you think your offer should be. Do you have any ideas for an offer which you think would be amazing?
I was actually interested to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
So what I do now, but that's because most of it has been referral, right? So
sure.
People usually just hop on a Zoom call and then we chat for a bit. There's no upfront costs, so that's like a huge advantage. They only pay if we're actually successful at getting Google to remove the review.
Okay.
So that's how it works right now, right? There's not some huge sales funnel. So I'm curious to kind of see if you can think of anything that would work for this, that wouldn't require someone to hop on a call.
Well, I think that what you mentioned about only paying if the review is successfully removed, I think that's quite a important part of the offer. I mean, that's obviously, that is a great offer in and of itself. So, and you know what, I think since you're targeting wealth management firms, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they might have a slightly different opinion to getting on a quick call compared to, like, if you're trying to contact some other industry where people don't want to do phone calls, then maybe it's different. But yeah, potentially asking for a Zoom call or something isn't the worst call to action, but we'll get to that soon. But maybe you'll say something like, um, uh, "Do you want me to?" And notice how when I'm writing this email, I'm writing in first person, so I say I or me. I'm not saying we, because if you say we, you just sound like some kind of generic salesperson sending the same email to a million people. It doesn't seem real. So that's why, in case anyone who's watching this video is wondering, that's the thought process. So do you want me to remove? Do you want me to remove? Okay, so what we have here is by no means the perfect email. It definitely needs to be refined. You could probably spend another hour or two improving this, but it's a general outline based on the general framework, which I usually like to use. So I'm just going to go through this one more time and then potentially refine it one more time as I'm going through it. And then I guess you can also contribute whatever thoughts you may have. So subject line is review names, review on Google. So we're basically mentioning the name of the person who gave the review. So this might say something like, I don't know, Mary Johnson's review on Google. And they'll say, hi, first name. I help wealth management companies remove negative reviews from their Google listings by getting their appeal in front of a real person at Google. I've already removed 50 plus negative reviews from other wealth management firms. Do you want me to remove the negative reviews from your company's Google listing? You only pay if the review is successfully removed. Best, Matt. And then it says, P.S. I saw the negative review that Mary Johnson gave Goldman Sachs, which is obviously the company's name, whoever you're targeting, on Google. So I wanted to reach out. So I think the call to action / offer section could probably still be improved slightly. I don't think this is necessarily the best written call to action / offer, but I think this is going down the right path. So I think after, maybe you ask for a call. I mean, I usually try not to ask for the call if possible, but if depending on what you think, you can obviously edit this how you think it should be. So yeah, I think we could spend the next 2 hours trying to refine this, but that's not really going to be productive for the purposes of this call. But I think this is a really good place to start. Do you have any questions about the specifics in terms of building the lead list, or maybe how to use custom variables or anything like that when it comes to actually implementing this campaign?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, that's super great. That was kind of, I sent you the draft before, and this is like 1,000 times better. I never would have thought to do that. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think the only part of this email here, which sort of slightly technical, is basic. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't call it, it's not difficult. It just requires a little bit of effort, which is, somehow building a scraper to scrape relevant data from different Google Map listings based on location, and based on certain criteria that you need, and just putting that data into a CSV file or a Google spreadsheet like this, so that you can then download the Google spreadsheet as a CSV file and upload it to a campaign. And I'll just quickly show you something which I think you might find helpful, and also to the people watching this. When you're inside Email Chaser, if you create a campaign, there is a CSV file template which you can download and then use, and you can upload that to a Google spreadsheet. And I'm going to show you how to get that template right now, so that when you're doing this, it's just easier. So you'll get to this page here, and then you'll see that it says start with our template. So if you click that, it automatically will download a CSV file template. And what you can do is then go back to your Google spreadsheet, and you then just select the first field here. Go to File, go to Open. We're going to go to Upload, Browse. I'm just going to upload that leads template CSV file that I just downloaded. And once you upload that, you're this is the sort of data. So this is dummy data. So you would obviously just delete this, but you don't want to delete the column headers at the top, obviously. And what you can also do is you can add your own custom columns. So for example, when we go back to this email we just wrote, we said, okay, there's going to be a custom variable that says review names, review on Google. So you might say something like, okay, we're going to have a column called name of reviewer or something. Who knows? I'm just making this up, but you might just call it something like name of reviewer. And then when you are building your custom scraper, maybe from Five or Upwork, or maybe you're using an existing tool, when you scrape the name of each person who gives a negative review to all these different companies, you can automatically put those names or that data into this column, so that for each lead, you can also then use this as a custom variable, so that when you're writing your cold email, you can just insert that into this section of the email, obviously. And then same thing here, where we say company name, that's also pretty obvious, but we already have in the template it says current company, so you can just put the name of each wealth management firm in here, and you can just quickly insert that using that custom variable. That's kind of all I have to say on that. This call has already gone on for quite a while, so I don't want to hold you all day, but do you have any other questions or any thoughts about what we made here today?
No, I'm super excited. I took you up on this offer though, so I think that email's super helpful.
Thanks. Well, thanks for taking the time to do this conversation. One thing I want to emphasize is I think this campaign, the success of this campaign really comes down to your execution. Because if you're able to build an awesome lead list doing this kind of scraping technique, and you write a good email and you actually do it correctly, then I think it's going to work. So I mean, that sounds obvious, but a lot of people just default to, okay, I'm going to export 10,000 random businesses, zero targeting basically, zero relevancy, and I'm just going to somehow magically get a bunch of clients, but that's not how it works. So I think this strategy has a lot of potential, and if you launch this campaign and it performs well, obviously tell me, because I'll be curious to see how it goes.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, George.
Thanks.